Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Fiscal Philosophy YouTube channel. I consider myself to be a value-oriented investor. Now, I received multiple requests over the weekend to cover Pfizer stock. Now, Pfizer is a small component of one of my M1 investments. It's part of the 50 stock portfolio that I designed to outperform SCHD. And while I am a healthcare bull, I do find pharmaceutical companies to be somewhat of an enigma and a challenge to value. And today I'll do my best to go over Pfizer. And hey, this stock's down 50% almost year to date. Could it be a value? Potentially. Certainly, I do like healthcare for the long term, and there are both advantages and disadvantages to investing in pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer. Let's dig in. So, one of the first big issues with Pfizer and what's leading likely to the sharp decline in price is the fact that this is one of those businesses that got a big pandemic bump. As you can see, their revenue sort of started to peak around the time vaccinations were peaking. And since then, as the pandemic and the fear around it and the rate at which people are needing new vaccines has started to drop off, well, the revenue is also starting to drop off in line with that. That speaks to the predictability of pharmaceutical companies. You can't really predict when the next pandemic will begin, or once it begins, when exactly it will end. And that's proven to be a bit of a pitfall for Pfizer investors. Regarding the dividend metrics, the payout ratio looks like it's pretty much in the red zone, but 2023 has been a year of extremely sharp decline in net income and free cash flow, which it seems like is probably just, sort of an anomaly. If we take a look at the analyst expectations, you'll see that both historically and going forward, they generally produce a lot more earnings per share than they have so far this year. So this is probably just another side effect of the decline from the COVID bump. And I would assume their payout ratio will get back to a more sustainable level in the coming year or two. As you can see from these analyst price forecasts, there is quite a spread in what the expectations are amongst the professionals for what the next 12 months and beyond might look like for Pfizer. I think this is partly just because the pharmaceutical business model, it has some, I would say, predictability issues and some need for expertise as far as evaluating what their future might be. So when it comes to evaluating the future of a pharmaceutical company like Pfizer, you have to kind of understand the pipeline a little bit, okay? Because honestly, it just takes one real banger of a drug for them to really have a big surge in growth in their revenue and profit for a period of time, at least while the patent stays in force. Like, look at ABBV and Humira. It was making up at one point in the last few years like 40% of their revenue. Okay, that's a hugely successful drug because it. I can't remember. I think it's an anti-inflammatory of some kind. But anyways, so you look at the pipeline here. I mean, we're on the phase ones. Obviously, the phase threes are the ones that are kind of closest to actually being on the market. And look, I mean, right here, sort of towards the top right now, you got Wilson disease. Okay, that's only in phase one, but okay, you could look at that and say, okay, this is in rare diseases, so probably not a huge addressable market, but if it's a really good drug, it might be that everyone in that market wants to, be on this particular medication at some point. So I Googled it. That's 1 in 30,000 in the global population has this disease. So it's a pretty knowable, addressable market size, but not every disease on here is going to be easily Googleable in a sense, right? Obesity, okay, yeah, you can find out how many people are overweight or obese according to like BMI data and stuff like that. But at the same time, will every obese person, like, is a medication, a chemical intervention, a pill, an injection, whatever, is that right for every person with a weight problem? Or is it, would diet and exercise suffice in most cases, right? Which kind of, because there's varying degrees as well. Would it be right for all obese people? Most obese people? Only the people on my 600-pound life? That's an important question. You would have to dive into the study to the clinical trials and everything, probably to understand what market they're trying to address there specifically. Here you got rheumatoid arthritis. Like, okay, there's a lot of people that have rheumatoid arthritis. If that's a really, really great treatment for rheumatoid arthritis, that's a big addressable market. But what's the competition like? Is it better than the other drugs in that market? Okay, and they've got They've got 83 candidates, all right, in their pipeline right now. And to really have a good idea of their future, I would think you would want to understand as much of this as possible, or maybe if they explain on their earnings calls, what some of the more promising candidates are, maybe narrow it down a little bit. That would be something to look at. And you have to wonder, like, to what degree do the analysts that are covering this stock, because these are probably guys that studied finance, right? Not medicine necessarily, although maybe some of them dabbled in both. I don't know. How much does the average Wall Street analyst understand these clinical trials and this drug pipeline? That's a good question to ask as well. I think, analysts' estimates might be of limited utility in some cases on this, right? So this makes it a little hard, to predict this business. And, business predictability makes pricing a little bit more difficult, okay? So, yeah, you can fire up a DCF model. So analysts think that 2024 will be about $3.21 worth of earnings per share. That's the consensus EPS estimate for 2024. Like I said, 2023 was a sharp decline. They suffered a little bit of a snapback from the Cove, and it looks like, they're expecting it to recover back up to a more middle-of-the-road area like what it was prior. But okay, what's the actual growth rate going to be? I mean, you can sit here and assume a 12.5% discount rate and, low single-digit growth and get to it being a pretty good price today, right? For if you want, that 12-ish% return. But the question is, what if a lot of these drugs die on the vine and they don't have, what if, their current phase 3 clinicals kind of fizzle and don't really do so well? What happens when some of the patents on some of their, top drugs that they're doing today start expiring, maybe in a few years? These are questions that are really, really difficult, I think, to answer. I think Pfizer, of course, is a giant. I don't think they're going anywhere. Okay, I don't think they're going to zero or anything like that. I don't think that's really the risk with Pfizer. I think it's just more or less how reliably can they grow the cash, the cash flow, the earnings, right? And that's a tough one to answer, honestly. I think the amount of knowledge and research that it would take to really give like a really, really good answer I think it's a pretty big hurdle to overcome. I don't even know. Like, honestly, I wish I had somebody, in the medical profession, that especially maybe somebody that understands or has, read scientific literature that could, go over some of the, the phase 3s especially, and tell us like how marketable, is it, like what's the addressable market for the drug? Like how many people actually have the specific variant of this disease, like that this specific drug is, setting out to treat? How promising is it compared to the current treatment on the market? That kind of thing. That would be pretty interesting if we could have somebody like that participate in a conversation about Pfizer. If you are somebody, with those kind of credentials, I encourage you to hop on the Discord and, tell us a little bit about some of the clinicals going on at Pfizer. But for me, I have trouble putting an exact value on something if it has such a low predictability where we don't know how these studies and these clinicals are going to pan out, what's going to be the next banger drug for them that, really takes off to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, versus which ones are just going to kind of be mediocre, or which ones just won't even get approved at all. The trials, these are not, necessarily all going to make it to market. In fact, the majority of them may die on the vine, right? We don't know. And so for that reason, I don't really feel great giving an exact valuation for Pfizer. I definitely think I see, probably about what kind of assumptions people are making in order to get to a price close to today's stock price. I don't think it's necessarily a terrible thing to be in. In fact, it is, again, in my my 50 stock sort of, ignoring valuation, dollar cost averaging, long-term, dividend portfolio type thing. But it's not in my value portfolio just because I don't think I have yet to come up with like a true appropriate valuation where I'm comfortable taking a sizable chunk of just this stock on its own. So that's where I'm at with Pfizer, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think if you're in Pfizer. If you made it to the end of the video, I certainly appreciate you. If you could do me a favor and like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff, and continue the conversation on Discord, link in the description. Let me know down below if you have any shares of Pfizer and what you think a fair value might be. Take it easy, everyone, and have a wonderful week.